Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, we're going to be looking at the wacky world of unit conversions, notably which stats and bonuses make the leap between players and which ones don't. For example, do your new units stolen from Teutons still resist conversion? And what about Polish folwarks? Will converting them give your Sicilian farmers some supercharged food income? We'll just have to find out. This has been a surprisingly often requested topic, and while there is a general rule of thumb, as I explored in a mini-series almost 10 years ago, at this point with so many new bonuses, techs, and newly introduced mechanics in the game, it almost feels like there are more exceptions than examples of the rule at this point. So let's explore a lot of those interesting cases. To start from the basic way it's supposed to work, the simplest rule is that whenever you convert a unit, it's frozen just how it is, and can't be improved with additional techs. If I convert a militia with no upgrades, it doesn't matter if I now have or even later get its blacksmith techs, research the men-at-arms upgrade, or have a civ bonus like Japanese faster attack that could apply. I just get the unit as it was, and regardless of my civilization's progress and innovation, we never share it with the new guy. That goes the other way as well though, and converting a Frank Paladin leaves me with still a great unit, even if my own Knightline is terrible or even non-existent. We don't confiscate the stuff he already has. This is such a hard and fast rule that even if you're the same civilization as the converted unit, here as Cumans, if I convert it and then hit the next stage, it won't benefit from my faster cavalry speed boost. The game remembers this is not originally my step lancer and won't let me improve it. Even worse, if it's converted back to the original player, they still can't upgrade it. The game basically says it doesn't want to keep track of the unit's upgrades once it switches owners the first time. This all extends far beyond just things like blacksmith and basic upgrades as well. And to show the breadth of stats that become forever locked, it includes Mongol faster firing cavalry archers, which retain their faster attack rate, various healing, unique techs and bonuses for Bengalis, Berbers, Dravidians, and Georgians, and is the same rule for buildings, with the Byzantine extra HP bonus and Chinese Great Wall tech making the jump, as well as Japanese Yasuma Tower extra arrows, all being something you can steal from other players. The safe assumption is if it shows up on the unit's extended stats card, you will get the benefit if you convert the unit. To me, this makes a lot of sense, as you could get into some pretty silly examples if it weren't the case. Imagine converting a Frank Paladin and then giving it your Bulgarian stirrups for faster attack, or even just bloodlines. Likewise, imagine giving a Longbowman Thumbring, a Cataphract Blast Furnace and bloodlines, or Celts converting an elite Eagle Warrior that then runs as fast as a Hussar. Clearly, the devs wanted nothing to do with all of these unintended iterations of mixing bonuses and tech trees. Now, since everything in AoE2 follows very simple rules, that's the end of the video, guys. Thanks for watching. Of course, I'm just kidding. It's never that simple, and there are many exceptions. The first big category of those are units which are secretly swapped out for new ones in some way. One example is trebuchets, where if you've toured the editor, no, are actually two different units, the packed and unpacked version, which are swapped out for one another. Following the general rule of thumb, converting a Briton Warwolf or Japanese Katapuruto trebuchet do give you the extra blast damage and attack rate stats, but as soon as you pack it up, it's replaced with one of your own, dropping those advantages forever. Even when unpacking it again, it simply gives you one of your trebuchets, as if you built it yourself. Similarly, monks picking up a relic become a different unit entirely, so if you manage to snag one of those 95 HP Aztec monks missing heresy, you'll want to avoid picking up any relics with it, or it just becomes one of your probably less exciting and certainly less sharply dressed monks. Switching between versions of a converted Wrath also swaps out the unit and updates it for your civilization, so a Mongol player converting one can swap it around to give the ranged version a 25% faster attack rate, since it's technically a cavalry archer. Villagers also follow the same rules, at least sometimes. Every task where a villager gets a new name is technically swapping them out with a new unit. So if you convert an Aztec, Berber, or Spanish Supremacy villager, you'll only get their benefits as long as they don't change jobs. Here, notice the villager keeps her Supremacy stats until I assign her to gold, for example. That said, just as many villager bonuses don't seem to make the jump, with mine longer lasting resources, Polish stone miners generating gold, Burgundian vineyard farmers generating gold, and Khmer farmers instantly dropping off food being bonuses that villagers lose upon switching civilizations, unless you also happen to be one of those civs yourself. Combining those two things, we can get sneaky and have a situation where the Poles convert an Aztec stone miner, for example, and retain its +3 carry capacity until it switches to a new job. And meanwhile, the Poles' extra gold generation will then apply to it, leading to cases where you can double up civ bonuses on the same unit. With some stats seemingly attached to units and others to the player themselves, let's keep mining deeper and look at some of the cases where it's not immediately clear which way the game is going to lean. Since we're already on the topic, let's start with converting units and open a whole can of worms by asking if the upgrades that don't technically show up in the extended stats also carry over, or if they get left behind. Of course, with ballista elephants, their +1 range from siege engineers and even double crossbow shot carry over, as those appear in the stats. But what about ballistics, which isn't shown? It turns out that's researched at the player level, so if your opponent has it researched but you don't, somehow the elephant forgets how to account for enemy movement in its aiming once you control it. It's the exact same result with Portuguese gunpowder units and their tech arquebus, giving them the equivalent of ballistics, and they lose the tracking benefits of that after being converted by a non-Portuguese player. It might make sense then that thumb ring also wouldn't carry over, as accuracy isn't displayed. But remember, it does increase attack rate, which appears in the stats. So maybe it shouldn't be a surprise then that all of the effects of thumb ring do stick with a converted unit, along with husbandry and even herbal medicine for towers. On the flip side, in all three cases, if you convert a unit without those techs, you'll have no way of later giving it to them. It's the same thing with murder holes on towers as well, and if your opponent didn't have murder holes when you converted the tower, it will never be able to gain that ability later. Redemption also can't be stolen from opponents' units, so Mayans grabbing an Aztec monk with Redemption will still be unable to convert a stable and make Xolotl warriors, since Mayans lack Redemption themselves. Maybe the best illustration of a disconnect between a player and unit effect within the same technology is chemistry. In this case, it usually gives both +1 attack and the fire animation on projectiles. And after a conversion, the +1 attack is still retained even if you don't have chemistry yourself, but the flaming arrow animation goes away unless you pick that up at your own university. Another interesting case is sergeants, who can be converted by non-Sicilians but instantly forget how to build donjons. That is, unless you as the player doing the conversion are also Sicilians, in which case they work like usual. Similarly, converted donjons if your Sicilians work normally, but converting a donjon with any other civilization only gives you the ability to train the spearman line, which admittedly isn't nothing. You also can't steal the benefit of the Tatar Hill bonus for extra attack or the Georgian Hill bonus damage reduction. Maybe this is to be expected, as those aren't shown on the stats, but that makes it even more curious that the Sicilian bonus damage reduction does stick to a Sicilian unit you convert as a carryover. Another similar feeling exception is the Roman Centurion's aura effect. Converting a Roman Centurion can be used to boost your own swordsman line regardless of your civilization, which can get pretty scary with Japanese champions, for example. Likewise, a Roman player converting a Japanese champion also gets the exact same double boosted effect of the faster than usual Japanese attack rate as well as the Roman player's Centurion aura, giving us the first example contradicting the rule that you can't change the displayed stats of a unit after you convert it. On the other hand, a converted Lightus follows the basic rule of freezing the unit at whatever attack boost it had from relics at the time of conversion. If the Lithuanian player had 2 relics, for example, it wouldn't matter which civilization converts it, or if they have 0, 4, or even 200 relics garrisoned. Its stats are just locked at the extra +2 forever. Now though, let's move on to buildings, which these days immediately bring up various questions about aura effects, line of sight, and passive resource generation. A pretty safe assumption is that, like the Centurion, any aura effects will carry over. Converting a Caravanserai, for example, gives your trade cards the usual speed bump and healing rate, though I'm not sure why you'd ever want your trade line in the exact same spot your opponent had theirs, but you never know. Converting a Hindustani or Persian villager, though, naturally won't let you build a new Caravanserai, as the buildings are part of those civilizations' tech trees and not your own. Similarly, converting a Phaedoria does give you a trickle of resources, and by the same token, Byzantine buildings with free town watch or town patrol, the Ethiopians' extra line of sight on outposts, as well as obviously players who picked up extra line of sight techs will transfer over, which admittedly is another example that kind of breaks the stat card rule, as line of sight isn't technically shown, but is transferred anyway. Gujar mills are then a fun case to look at. They can usually garrison 10 herdables to create a trickle of food for Gujars, and converting one as a non-Gujar civ keeps the ability to garrison, but not the food trickle, making them just a safe storage space. Likewise, if you're Gujars and convert someone else's mill, you can't garrison sheep inside of it, but if you could somehow, they would generate food. On the flip side, converting a Gujar dock will let you garrison fishing ships inside of it, Khmer houses keep their villager garrison ability for their new owners, and you do get the extra pop space benefits from Inca houses, Dravidian docks, and a Slav team's military buildings. The Folwark is another curious case. You would think you could convert it for the aura boost dropping off food when you place a new farm around it, but that only works if you're Poles. You can imagine the fun of stealing a Folwark and spamming farms around it with Sicilians, dropping off up to 81 food instantly each time you build a 60 wood farm, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. With buildings done though, now let's take a look at our next class, the team bonuses. As a group, you might assume there's a default way that team bonuses are handled during conversions, but it turns out there are exceptions just like all the other bonuses. For example, the faster working Briton, Goth, Hun, and Celt building team bonuses do carry over if they're converted. So a converted barracks that was built with a Goth ally will always work 20% faster. What's interesting though is the Aztec faster military unit creation speed bonus isn't transferred, but still applies to any building under Aztec control, so you can stack those two things on top of each other as Aztecs. Likewise, the Bohemian faster working market and Bulgarian faster working blacksmith do keep their boosts if converted, so stealing a blacksmith from a Bulgarian player and powering through your research on that building is a smart and sneaky play. Frank stables with chivalry also continue to work faster after conversion, and the main takeaway seems to be that stealing buildings will generally give you all work speed benefits that apply to them. Other seemingly related but differently worded team bonuses though don't necessarily work the same way, and for example, converting Magyar archery ranges don't produce cavalry archers faster, converted Gujar buildings don't produce camels or elephants faster, and Turk buildings create gunpowder units at the usual speed. In these cases, it's the units themselves which are affected by the team bonus and not the buildings, keeping them at the player level where they don't pass to a new owner. It's the same thing with Italian barracks, Hun stables, etc., which don't give you access to condottieri or tarkans. Also, to answer the original question from the top, no, Teuton's conversion resistance, just like faith and devotion, doesn't carry over to a new player. And of course, most important of all, you'll be happy to know that yes, Saracen archers and their allies units keep their +2 bonus versus buildings even after being converted. But finally, let's take a look at one last doozy of a conversion quirk, and the only one in the list that I would consider an obvious bug. Let's say you manage to get an incredibly lucky conversion of a Celt, Ethiopian, or Mongol siege onager without having your monk flattened. Nothing could be more exciting, and unlike a trebuchet, it can't transform, so it should never be swapped out, and you should get to keep it forever. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, a bug exists in the game where researching chemistry, siege engineers, devotion, faith, or an onager line upgrade yourself, and then moving a converted onager line unit swaps it out for one of your own, meaning by upgrading the unit, you can paradoxically end up downgrading it. Even more confusingly, if we reset the test and instead I research Heavy Scorpion, that also resets an onager line unit after conversion if I move it. Holding on to great onagers proves to be surprisingly tricky unless you've already finished your own related upgrades, and this is the only unit I've found that consistently has this behavior, though I've noticed a similar bug happen now and then for siege rams and heavy scorpions in the past. So to put it all together, while there definitely is a rule of thumb that stats are frozen after a conversion, and that will generally predict what happens with usual play, as we've seen, it's a somewhat loose guideline with a lot of exceptions that transfer over without meeting that criteria. That'll do it for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.